Hello, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or if you're watching on our growing YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, we're football season's fast approaching, man. Carolina's season opener against Virginia Tech is just about a week away now. So I know football camp and everything that's been going on over the past month it's been a crazy time for everybody over here at THI with all the media availability. And I know Jeremy and Mac don't shy away from making the players available. So big thanks to them for that. But it's definitely an egg grind, I can imagine, for you, especially to cover everything. But with season fast approaching, with Carolina season opener just getting closer and closer here, we're here to talk about the offense. We're going to be doing a couple little preview videos on the offense in this one. We'll obviously have another one on the defense as well. So AJ, let's dive right into it.
Yeah.
As we always do. We've talked a lot, really since spring football, going back to spring, about this offense and how we thought it was going to shape out. We've done some podcasts as well. You've written stuff about it over the past month or so during Carolina's fall camp. And, it's just an extremely talented group. You got Sam Howell there at quarterback. You got some depth at wide receiver. You got a couple of young running backs who are making their name, and a guy like THI Chandler in there, and then you throw in an offensive line that returns all five starters. So expectations are extremely high for Carolina on the offensive side of the ball, and I think this is an offense overall that has the potential to be really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, they have the potential to be as good as they were a year ago. They might not have the ground game they had a year ago, but that's okay. I mean, that was an amazing ground game, and at times they were so good that Sam didn't have to throw for 400, but there might be occasions where Sam needs to go 350 or 400. And a lot of really good teams have won championships with quarterbacks that do that. I point to Joe Burrow just a couple of years ago. LSU had a ground game too, but they had an amazing passing game, and they were able to move the ball. And if you can't stop somebody in college football, the conventional thing that's, well, you got to be able to run the ball and pass the ball with balance to win championships. Not if you're so good at one and you're pretty good at the other. That's usually lends to an outstanding result. I think Carolina's going to be positioned to be that way this year. The only questions that I have are how much better are they at pass protection, because they're going to have to keep Sam healthy, because if he goes down, as much as people like Jacoby Criswell and Drake May, they're not Sam. I don't think Carolina heads to the CFP without Sam Howell. So they got to keep him healthy. Also, they got to keep him in a position where he's going through all of his reads and the routes are all there and he sees everything and doesn't have to put himself in a position where sometimes he takes too long to get rid of the ball and gets a sack and all that kind of stuff. So cleaner up front means cleaner everywhere else. And the other thing is, outside of Josh Downs, who we know, unless he gets hurt, he's going to step forward. And I think every Carolina football fan will be major Josh Downs fans by the middle of October. I've been saying that for a while. He'll be a household football name at Carolina in another 2 months from now, Jacob. I think a couple of other guys are going to have to step up. Antoine Greene, everything we're hearing about him in camp so far is that he's really coming along. He's as fast as he used to be, and the confidence is not an issue anymore. That used to kind of hold him back at times. Mac Brown said that's not an issue anymore. That's actually not keeping him from being the player that he can be. And everybody's raging about Emery Simmons. Emery says that he was clocked at 21 miles an hour on the GPS, and there are times he's the fastest guy. And they've got some other dudes that they need to get healthy. Bo Corrales has 80 receptions in his career, 12 touchdowns. He's got a flair for the dramatic. They need that corner end zone guy. Joffrey Brown is the fastest guy on the team when he's healthy. He's shown explosive ability in the past before, so they need him. And of course, everyone's talking about Justin Olsen. They need him to back up what's being said about him. If that happens, they're fine at wide receiver. They're going to be fine at tight end. The only question is, how well does Sam use the backside of the running field in the passing game to catch the ball, and also in pass protection? Because pass protection isn't just the offensive line. It's very much how the tight ends help out when they're asked to do that, and how the running backs help out. And Mac told us the other day, they're looking for a third back. It's THI Chandler, freshman Caleb Hood, who was a quarterback in high school, but he's picked up on so much stuff because he's got an amazing football IQ. Well, who's the third guy? When Mac mentioned British Brooks and Josh Henderson the other day, the light went on in my head. Older guys equal pass protection.
Yeah.
So the younger guys might be a little bit more gifted in some respects, according to some people, but the older guys know how to pass protect. If you're going to have to use a third back, and maybe use him in a passing situation. He's got to be able to pick up the blitz. He's got to be able to help out a lineman who's getting beat on a bull rush or something like that, and keep Sam protected.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the biggest thing for this team this year is you got a guy like Sam. I know that you've got talent at the backup quarterback position, but let's be honest, you got a guy in Drake May who's never played a college football game and a guy in Jacoby Criswell who's seen mop-up minutes every once in a while. So
44 snaps last year for Criswell.
That's not a lot. And when you look at what Carolina's trying to accomplish, what their set goals are from what they're telling us, you got to keep a guy like Sam Howell healthy to get there. So let's talk about that a little bit more in depth. I'm glad you brought that up towards the end because that was the first thing I wanted to hit on. You got an offensive line that returns all 5 starters. I think there's some exciting things there behind those guys as well. William Barnes is a guy that continues to be talked about as somebody that's really stepped up. That's going all the way back to spring ball. I think Jordan Tucker's talked about him a lot as well when we talked to him a couple of weeks ago about just how much he's improved. There's some other guys back there that, Ed Montilus has played a lot of snaps for Carolina, is not a starter on that line. So you've got a lot of guys in there that can bring depth to an already very, very talented offensive line. And then talking about pass protection, staying on that topic, you look at the running back position. You got a guy like Todd Chandler who transferred from Tennessee, has played a lot of minutes in his time as a volunteer, comes in with a lot of expectations now as well, especially when you look at who he's replacing in Michael Carter and Javonte Williams, 2 of Carolina's probably best ever backs, especially in recent memory. So I think there's definitely question marks at that running back position, like you mentioned, on who can be that guy. I know Max talked about Caleb Hood after their first scrimmage in particular, kind of being the number 2 back at the time. A lot of talk about DJ Jones from fans going back to spring ball. Seems like he's, not quite where they want him to be yet. And then you've got some veteran guys, like you mentioned, in Josh Henderson and British Brooks, who I think could really add something in the run block and pass protection side of things, but are still, for the most part, mostly inexperienced. So how do you see that kind of shaping up? And I think we know how important it is, but I mean, that's got to be a top of the list for Carolina's offense because overall it's a pretty talented group. But if you don't protect Sam, things can go wrong pretty quickly.
Well, I'll start with running back. DJ Jones would have started the Orange Bowl if he was healthy.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't, so Brooks got the most majority of the reps. Henderson got quite a few as well. They did okay. They weren't bad. It was a tough situation to put them in. They played against an outstanding defense that was kind of pinning the ears back on Sam a little bit.
Yeah.
I think at best those guys are a third back in this situation. I know that Henderson was a 4-star kid coming out of New Jersey. A lot of people thought that he would step right in and be a starter eventually, but it doesn't always work out that way. Mm-hmm. And it hasn't so far for him. We've seen him in practice, Jacob, and we've seen him in the spring game, but certainly in practice, we've seen him run well. We've seen him turn the corner and do those things. The fact that Mac kind of named him the other day when he was talking about the need to be able to, pass protect, that's a big thing because if you're a running back and you cannot protect the passer, you don't handle that part of your job well, you're not going to get on the field. I don't know what the issue is for DJ Jones. If there is an issue, I know that being healthy has been a little bit of a problem and consistency has been a little bit of an issue. You cannot be outstanding one play and really mediocre the next for coaches to gain trust in you. Playing time is all about trust. Mm-hmm. Players have opportunities every day in practice to gain the trust of their coaches, their position coach and their head coach and their coordinator. And if they don't do that on a regular basis, their coaches are going to be more hesitant to put them in the game. You could be ultra talented, but if you haven't shown consistency, it's really challenging for coaches to put you on the field because they need that. They need to have faith that you're at least going to be able to do A, B, and C, even though they'd like you to do more than that. But at least A, B, and C is better than A 1 minute and no B and C the next 2 snaps. So I think that that's probably maybe what DJ Jones might be dealing with a little bit right now, but it wouldn't surprise me to see him on the field because he is so talented. And if the consistency thing happens, we will probably see him at some point, I would think. He's certainly good enough. As far as up front goes, Jacob, they're as loaded up front on the offensive line and ready and have guys ready to step into play as they've been really since I've been covering this program in a lot of ways. They go 10 deep. You mentioned William Barnes and Ed Montilus. Montilus has played a ton of snaps. Mm-hmm. I think he started 14 games in his career. Mm-hmm. But Kieran Johnson, former walk-on, a kid who showed up and busted his tail and has really made a lot of progress. I know one of his former position coaches thrilled to see what he's done and kind of knew that, look, this guy, we gave him a preferred walk-on opportunity because we thought he could become this guy. And all credit goes to Kieran Johnson for being that guy. with Brian Anderson not 100% back right now at center, although he's expected to be, but at the time that we're recording this, he's not. Kieran Johnson's been taking most of the reps with the ones at center. He could also play guard. Then you talk about Kaden Baker, someone that they're talking about a lot this month in camp, and a player who came in with considerable expectations and made a lot of progress quickly. And also Jonathan Adorno, a local kid here from the Raleigh area, who could play center and guard. He's getting work at both. And I think that they trust him. So those are 10 guys that they trust. And you might see some of these players get a series in the first half against Virginia Tech, because they're going to lose a lot of offensive linemen after this year. They've got to get next year's group ready. Yeah. And when you watch Mack Brown and his staff build a program, they're coaching for now and they're coaching for down the road as well, which is why whoever ends up QB2, you might see them get the occasional series, because they have to get up to the line of scrimmage against the number one defense, and they have to bark a cadence if they're not in silent cadence. They have to see the defense. They have to make reads and make adjustments when first stringers are on the other side of the ball to get them more ready for next year. So we're going to see guys play, because this is all about getting young dudes ready while also winning the game at hand. And that's what's kind of exciting, because when Mac first got there, we would run the snap count reports. On defense, there'd be like 15 guys listed, because everyone was playing every snap. But on offense, there weren't a ton listed either. The snap count charts that Dean is going to do after games this year, it's going to be like the bar tab at Animal House or something like that. Yeah, she's got her work cut out for her. It's going to be quite lengthy and for good, and that's the sign of a growing program. Yeah. So look for that from the offensive line. If Baker runs in and gets a series, don't think, oh my gosh, one of the OTs are hurt. He's just getting playing time because he needs to get on the field. Mm-hmm. There is no substitute for live snaps in football. Mm-hmm. Probably more than any other sport, live snaps are harder to simulate in other situations, even in live scrimmages in football. Live game snaps are so valuable, so you're going to see these guys get those. And that's why I do think, a guy like DJ Jones will ultimately get an opportunity at some point, because he's got to have that. You got to feed a kid every once in a while to keep him going, and I think we might see that.
Yeah, I think that's what going to be one of the interesting things to watch about this team as a whole, and specifically, especially on the offensive side of the ball, is just the rotation you see at multiple positions. Because, what's the first thing Mac really talked about going back to November 2018? He was about building depth within this program to compete at where they wanted to compete at. I think he's getting there. He's really at a point now where they've got it in multiple positions. And I think there's still some question marks, not on the O-line in particular, but maybe looking at that wide receiver room, maybe looking at that running back room in terms of who comes in behind them that's really proven. And that kind of leads me on to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which was that wide receiver position. You mentioned something to me off camera that I thought was interesting. I didn't even realize this until you said it. You said only 4 receivers have taken every rep so far in practice during the preseason, which I thought was pretty interesting. They've had some guys with injuries. They've had some guys banged up, but when you look at 4, they're going to need more than that. They're going to need more than 4 guys out there who can go out there and make plays. And I know they've talked about, probably ideally having close to 8 in that rotation if you can make it there. So looking 11
is ideal.
That's
because of how much they run. Mm-hmm. And that's what Lonnie Galloway has said in the past, but go ahead.
Yeah, you're talking 8 to 11 guys. When you look at this year's group, maybe compared to last year when you had a guy like Diami and Daz, a little bit more of those spectacular proven players. Now you're rotating to this year. You got a guy like Josh Downs who's proven he could do it a little bit, going back to that Orange Bowl in particular and some other games last year. Emery Simmons has played a lot of snaps. Bo Corrales has kind of been in and out with injuries last year, still trying to get healthy and whatnot. But he's proven that he can do it. Like you said, 80 receptions in his career at Carolina. I think Justin Olsen's a guy plenty of people have talked about, but he's another guy that really hasn't seen live game reps as of yet. It hasn't played a predominant role on this offense. So I think there's definitely talent there, and a guy like Chaffrey Brown as well. I think there's definitely talent in that position group, but is there still some question marks about who exactly steps up and can be a consistent playmaker for this team, going into the season?
I think there's trust in Downs. There's trust in Simmons, and Simmons can be more explosive than what we've seen so far. He's a guy that can get over the top of the defense. Antoine Greene, same kind of guy.
I forgot about him.
They say he's there now, and he's played. And even Olsen played 68 snaps last year. So he got on the field, but I don't think he was targeted more than maybe once.
I don't think so either.
But he was out there. And I've been told that he's a pretty good blocker. And blocking is really important in Carolina's offense. For wide receivers, if you think of those runs that Javonte and Michael had last year, Yeah, they deserve a ton of credit for that. But outside the offensive line, open up some of those holes. The blocking downfield that allowed them to turn 15-yard runs into 35 and 40-yard runs is in part because of the wide receivers. And that's why you want to have a lot of them. That's why Galloway wants to play a ton of those guys, because he wants them fresh. Because you want your wide receivers blocking on that potential big play in the fourth quarter, the same that they do in the first and second quarter. So you got to be fresh. Blocking is the first thing that's going to go from a wide receiver or some of his cuts when he's not as fresh. So you need them to be fresh. But, Mac has said a couple of times, Jacob, he looks at the wide receiver room the way people looked at it 2 years ago. 2 years ago, De'Ami Brown was coming off a true freshman year. He did a little bit, and Daz been okay, but, Daz wasn't yet Daz. And people had questions, who's going to be the quarterback until they name Sam, and who they going to throw the ball to? Well, they had 2,000-yard receivers in 2019, and they had a 1,000-yard rusher, Michael Carter, who wasn't yet the Michael Carter we eventually saw. And Javonte, who people thought was just a short yardage back, ran for 933 yards 2 years ago. So, college football is about opportunity. And, a couple of years ago, a lot of people had no idea that Joe Burrow was as good as he was. A year ago, people thought, well, Spencer Rattler at Oklahoma. All right, well, he's a freshman. What's he going to do? Well, now he's a Heisman candidate. He might be the leading Heisman candidate going into the season, especially for those who care not to really look at the full picture that Sam L brings to the table. So college football is about opportunity. College football is about guys going out there and showing what they can do and performing. And every year there's always new faces. Go back and look. And this isn't a Heisman Trophy conversation, but this is an example of what I'm talking about. Go back and look at the preseason Heisman list the last couple of years. The guy who eventually won it wasn't on any of those lists. So you never really know. And there's going to be somebody that we're not talking about that much, especially in that receiver room, is going to step up. Maybe Justin Olsen's a stud. Maybe he's a guy that gets over the top of the defense, because Max said the other day, he's really good at making long plays. He's fast, and he's excellent at tracking and catching the ball. Maybe he's a guy we're talking about a lot in October. Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe it's Gavin Blackwell or J.J. Jones, two freshmen who are both extremely talented. Look, you and I were next to each other watching J.J. Jones back in spring practice, remember? I mean, that's a beautiful athlete. He glides, and he's a corner. And he's a corner end zone guy. So maybe one of them step up. Mac mentioned Tyler Kraft the other day. He's been in the program for a couple of years, and that's really the first time his name's come up. And he hasn't even been healthy all the time. So dudes develop at different rates, and they get opportunities. And receivers are going to get opportunities because a lot of them are going to get on the field. So someone's going to step forward that we're not speaking a whole lot about right now. And that's one of the things I love about this. I love the element of surprise that is always a part of college sports.
Definitely. So pretty safe bet that, the guys you might see play a lot of snaps against Virginia Tech might not be the guys you see play a lot of snaps against, Miami later in the season.
Well, I think you will. I think what they'll do is they'll add to it. I mean, as long as they're healthy, Josh Downs, Emery Simmons, Antoine Greene are going to play a lot of snaps.
Oh, yeah.
When Bo is ready to go, Bo's a starter. Bo's a guy that healthy is in a camp next year at some point. Okay.
For sure.
And I think that Justin Olsen is, based on everything they're saying and based on what I saw at the practice that I was able to attend, he looks like he belongs on the field and he's very confident. Confidence ain't going to be an issue. So I think those five, you're certainly going to see run a lot of routes. And there's more. They would love to get, like you said, 8, maybe 9 guys. I don't think they're going to pull dudes back. Or Joffrey Brown, I should mention, of course, De'Ami admits that Joffrey's faster than him. I think consistency has been an issue for Joffrey, not so much in catching the ball. De'Ami's issue was drops his first couple of years. Joffrey just has to be consistent on every play. He's got to run every route the same way, whether he's the third option or the first option. Every route has to be run the same way. There's a lot of talent in that room, and I think it's one of those deals where Sam could spread the wealth throughout the room. Maybe Josh Downs doesn't catch 70 or 60 passes, but maybe they got a lot of guys with 30 to 40, 45 receptions. I could see that happening, and I could see more receptions at the tight end position. I think Garrett Walson's going to have a really good year. He wants to be a pro. This year will determine whether or not he's going to have that opportunity. They like Kamari Morales a lot. In fact, he might be the best route runner of the tight ends. And Bryson Nesbitt, the true freshman, is a freak athlete.
Yeah.
Dina told me a year ago after watching him in a 7-on-7 that I think it was either you or Kevin shot, and I'm going to do it, Jacob.
Go ahead.
Andrew, he's like a mini Eric Ebron. And that's kind of what we've seen. So I had to throw in my Dina.
You got to, man. The people tune in for that. People tune in for that. You know what I mean?
Those thumbs downs that we get on the videos are probably.
Yeah, now we know why. Now we know why.
They'd rather hear her do it than me actually impersonate it.
It might be Dina hitting us on that thumbs down when she hears the impression. That might be what it is, but I guess we'll never know, right?
She claims that she's okay with it, but she's such a nice person. She'd probably never tell me if it bothers her.
We do it it's out of love.
It's all right here, Dina.
Exactly. AJ, last thing I want to touch on before we wrap this one up. Carolina was a team last year, when you look at the running backs they had, like how good and how improved the O-line was. It was really good in short yardage and around the red zone, which was kind of different to what we saw during Mac's first year, when that was a little bit of a struggle. Now, you're looking at an O-line, like I mentioned, that comes back with everybody, right? You're looking at a guy like Ty Chandler stepping in, but you're also losing guys like Javonte Williams and Michael Carter, who maybe were able to make more plays in the red zone when maybe plays weren't as open as it would have been to another running back like Carolina has now, just because of how talented those guys were, if that makes sense. How do you foresee that kind of short yardage and red zone? How do you project this kind of Carolina team to be in those respects?
Well, when we talked to Mac last January, a few days after the Orange Bowl, which was our final presser with him until we got to the spring, he actually said at that point, we got to be better in the red zone. We got to be better running the ball in the red zone. And they were fantastic running the ball in the red zone last year, but a lot of that was Javonte and a good offensive line that graded out pretty well blocking in the red zone. But I think what he's saying there is, okay, the guys that were great, especially Javonte, at kind of taking us to another level in red zone offense, he's gone. So the guys up front, in order to be the same unit, have to be better. And I think that's the message that was sent. Tucker and McKeithen and all those guys up front, they have to be maybe 10, 12, 15% better blocking in the red zone now to get the same result that they had last year, because they don't have Javonte back there. Now, I think Caleb Hood's a kid that's going to be really good running the ball in the red zone, but he's a true freshman and he played quarterback in high school. He's got an amazing football IQ. And he has learned, and he's got all the skill set that you want from a running back. He's faster than he appears to people when they first look at him. He's quicker. He's got great vision. He's shifty. He cuts well. He economizes because he's smart and has great vision. But when you're 3rd and goal at the 1, you just got to plow forward, man. It's your dudes have to be better than their dudes. And I think that's a big part of what they were pushing for. Carolina has blocked very, very well at the 30, at midfield, and run plays in those situations. They wanted to improve their run blocking in very, very tight situations, and certainly close to the goal line, so they could approach having the same kind of efficiency scoring touchdowns, especially on the ground, that they had a year ago. And if they can do that stuff on the ground, then it opens up other opportunities. They could be pretty creative in the red zone. With some other stuff, if teams know that they're going to be so efficient blocking up front. And really think about it. If you want to be a great team, you should be able to run the ball in from 2 yards out. So their stated mission is CFP. Their stated mission is contend for the ACC championship. So we need to judge them on that. And to be that kind of team, you got to punch it in from 2. Yeah. No matter who your running back is, you got to punch it in from 2. So I think that's been one of the lesser talked about points of emphasis here in the last 8 months, but it's certainly been one.
I think last thing I want to ask you, think this is, one of the best offenses in college football? Pretty safe to say that? Or
yeah, it is.
Remains to be seen.
It is, but a lot of things remain to be seen. I mean, everything is there. The package is there. The system is there. Longo is better at adapting mid-game, mid-season, game to game than people have given him credit for. Okay. You historically, you look at his numbers and look at the teams he's coached, they have figured it out. And now he's got a lot more toys than he's ever had. So and there's more stuff he can do, provided that they have a solid ground game. They don't have to be great. They have to be pretty good. And he just needs to make sure that there's, 7, 8 guys running routes for him so they can do stuff and they're fresh. The fresher your guys are, the more stuff you can do. So I do think they're going to be one of the best offenses in college football. I'm not sure if they're going to be as good as last year, but I think the defense is going to be considerably better. So they may not have to be as good as last year to actually be a better team overall. It's also, we're not doing a special teams video, but also if there's marked improvement in the special teams. It's not just on the offense to win a championship. There are other components to the game.
Exactly. 100% about that. Yeah. It's going to, looking at last year's team, you had a hell of an offense. So it's going to be, if they can replicate that again, and you really look at how good the defense could be, which we'll be talking about in the other video that we do about the defense. I mean, this is a team that, like we've talked about a ton since spring ball, really, and even before that, that has a lot of potential to do some big time things. And that's why they're ACC coastal favorites preseason and, top 10 team. So we'll see how things shake out, but definitely an exciting time if you're a Carolina football fan. I think it's going to be a pretty fun team to watch, and in particular, be a pretty fun offense to watch once again. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Make sure you guys stay tuned for the defensive video as well. And thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know every single time we upload, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.